Welcome back to some Sly Cooper. For this video, I will be going over the history of the Coopers. Now, the majority of the dates that will be mentioned in this video are assumptions. You can find these assumptions on the Wikia page. I will leave the link in the description so you guys can check it out later. With that being said, let's get started. Alright, Bob Cooper was born between 10,050 and 10,020 BC in the Gungathal Valley. He's the first known Cooper. He's the inventor of the cane. While he's the one who came up with the idea. The cane started off with a piece of wood attached to a bone which looks like a hook. Now throughout the years, the Coopers made their own versions of this cane. Now Bob Cooper stole a bunch of pterodactyl eggs to feed his tribe, and that was easily accomplished by using his cane. Now during the events of Thieves in Time, the gang visited Bob in 10,000 BC. Time was getting altered. Le Paradox hired the Grizz. The Grizz stole all the pterodactyl eggs. That caused Bob Cooper to go into depression. He got out of shape eventually, and his cane got stolen. Now Grizz used those eggs to forge paintings. He thought that he would be able to dig them up in the present, to make a lot of fortune basically. But that didn't happen. The gang was able to stop the Grizz and he ended up in jail, starting his own rapping career. Now once everything went back to normal, Bob Cooper went back to stealing eggs. Now his personality, he's pretty friendly and enthusiastic. He's not in the Cooper Vault. He's not even featured in the Thievius Raccoonus. It makes sense, he's not the one who started the whole thing. Well, except the idea of the cane. Next, Slytunkhamen Cooper. He was born between 1350 and 1320 BC in ancient Egypt. He's the one who started the Thievius Raccoonus. Okay, if he started this book in ancient times, how is it still intact? Something tells me that the Coopers updated the book throughout the years. Now notice his two canes. They look very similar to Sly's cane. Was there some sort of influence involved? Could Slytunkhamen have met Sly from the future? Maybe. This ancestor probably stole from corrupt pharaohs. Was time altered? No. He came up with the shadow power technique which turns one invisible. His pages of the Thievius Raccoonus were stolen by Miss Ruby, one of the members of the Fiendish Five. She was pretty much attracted to his paranormal skills. Here's a fun fact, guys. Slytunkhamen was originally supposed to appear in Sly 4. Due to time constraints and the size limit on PS Vita, they scrapped him. If that's the case, that means that Sly is actually stuck in ancient Egypt. He could perhaps influence his ancestor. Maybe that could explain why his canes look very similar to Sly's. Slytunkhamen Cooper II. He was the son of Slytunkhamen I. He was born around 1320 BC. He's the one who created the Cooper Vault on Cane Island. He basically discovered Cane Island around 1300 BC. If he was born in 1320 and he found Cane Island in 1300 BC, then he was pretty much 20 years old at the time. Now this is what Sly mentioned in the Cooper Vault in Sly 3. This place was started by Slytunkhamen II. He built his fortune in the employ of the great pharaohs. That must have been around 1300 BC. Now the canes we see, those canes were probably his dad's, slightly modified. We can say that. He probably stole from corrupt pharaohs also. Was time altered? No. Did he have his own abilities in the Thievius Raccoonus? No. We don't really know, to be honest, but he probably used his father's abilities. Slytunkhamen Cooper III. He was the son of Slytunkhamen II. He was born between 1300 and 1280 BC. A picture of him is shown during the introduction of Sly 1. His cane looks similar to Sly's. He's probably using Slytunkhamen II's cane. Well, one of them. He probably modified them a little. And in the picture right here, we see him stealing from a pharaoh. Did he have any abilities in the book? No. Did time get altered? No. Salim Al-Kupar. He was born between 920 and 940 AD in ancient Arabia. He started the gang of 40 thieves in 960. If he was born in 940, then he was 20 years old by the time he formed the 40 thieves. Now in the Cooper Vault, he first used this large scimitar, which looks like a cane. Now we did see the scimitar in the cutscene in Sly 4. We see him a lot younger. When he got older, he replaced his normal cane with a stylized one. Now we don't see that stylized one in the Cooper Vault. Here's a small trivia. Salim looks pretty skilled. A lot of his skills were learned after his time. Now was time altered? Yep. At 1001 AD, he was about to retire. Miss Decibel showed up. The majority of the thieves had retired at that time. 3 were left. Those 3 were imprisoned and hypnotized to forge documents. Le Paradox tried to become royalty in the future by doing so. 1001 AD. If Salim was born in 940, that means it was 60 years old. He looks pretty old in Sly 4, so it kinda makes sense. Now once the gang solved all of the problems in his time, he finally was able to retire. And instead of continuing his thieving adventures, he decided to sell food for hungry people. Decibel ended up in jail, her horn got removed, and she started teaching music to other prisoners. Now his personality, he's pretty lazy, complains a lot. He's lazy, but he cares. Now his abilities in the Thievius Raccoonus. No, we didn't really have abilities in the book. The climbing cobra was exclusive excluded from the book, and that allowed them to repeatedly climb ropes and poles. I have a question, guys. In Sly 4, he looks pretty old. Did he have any kids? He looks old and single. Maybe he had a kid. Maybe that kid moved on and he said nothing about it. Maybe he had a brother. We don't know how many kids the Coopers had. Maybe he has a kid he has no idea about, and that kid eventually stumbled upon the book somehow. Next, Sir Galleth Cooper. He was born around 1260 and 1270 AD in medieval England. Sir was used to describe a knight. He was a knight, basically. Now, he went on a bunch of adventures. Pretty basic. In the Cooper Vault, we see a lance on a pedestal. It looks a bit different, but he was holding the same cane in Sly 4. Now, Galleth has a sword. He didn't use it that much in Sly 4. We notice it stuck in a stone. It could probably be his sword, but it could probably also be a reference to King Arthur. I mean, in Sly 4, there was a cutscene where this bird mentioned Merlin's magic powder. Time got altered at 1301 AD. A Black Knight arrived, aka Penelope. The guy got thrown in a circus and his cane got stolen, like his other ancestors. After Penelope was stopped, Galleth returned to his adventures. He became this dramatic actor and he formed the Knight of the Cooper Order, this army basically. Penelope was arrested, right? But she disappeared. Bentley kept receiving these weird postcards. What could he mean? It could mean anything. Now, Sir Galleth's personality. He's over dramatic, but very friendly. Now, there was an ability that was excluded from the Thievius Raccoonus. It's called the Catapult Crush technique, which allows the player to break through barriers when hook launching. Sly Micawber. He was born between 1400 and 1499 in Scotland, around the 15th century. He was considered the strongest of the Cooper clan, well, apart from Bob, of course. Apparently, he can break any lock with his large stone cane. There's actually two ways of spelling his name, I don't know if you guys noticed. We don't know much about him. For his abilities, it is assumed that he came up with the wall edge sneak, which allows the player to walk along walls. Now, in the Cooper Vault section, the player had to perform that move. Notice his cane, guys. Doesn't his cane look a bit similar to Jean Besson's wooden stick? Let's call it a stick, okay? Now, could they have met? Not possible. Jean Besson was born around the 1800s, and Sly was born around the 1400s. It's a huge time gap we're talking about. Could he have met one of Sly's ancestors in the 1800s? It's possible. Was time altered? No. Rioichi Cooper. He was born between 1560 and 1570 in feudal Japan. He trained as a ninja. He opened a sushi house. He was basically the inventor. Now, before all that, he became friends with a shark who joined him in battle. At a point, the shark got too old. He told Rioichi to take his life in order to make the best tasting sushi in the world and become successful. Now, we can notice a bunch of pictures in the sushi house. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that. Now, in those pictures, he looks pretty young. If he's born in 1560, then 1580 doesn't sound too far-fetched. He was probably 20 years old back then. Now, in the Cooper Vault, we notice two metal canes, but they're different in Sly 4. The explanation might be simple. I mean, we had Sucker Punch back then, and then Sanzaru stepped in. But what if we add a little story to this? What if, before the war, he used those two metal canes, and once he entered battle, he used his katana? But at a point, in order to keep his family signature alive, he decided to come up with two wooden canes. Yes, we do see him with one wooden cane, but during a cutscene, once he enters the sushi house, he has two wooden canes. Le Paradox actually stole one. Was time altered? Yeah, 1603, his cane got stolen, right? Al Jefe stepped in and he poisoned the Shogun. Rioichi got blamed for it, so because of that, he got put behind bars. After everything was fixed, he went back to his normal life and continued making sushi. His personality, he's very spiritual. When the player is idle, he levitates. He's very calm and respectful. He called Salim Sir Salim in the end. He pretty much speaks with riddles. For his abilities, the Thievius Raccoonus featured the Ninja Spire Jump. It would allow Sly to balance on a small point without falling. His pages from the Thievius Raccoonus were stolen by Sir Raleigh, another member of the Fiendish Five. For the Leaping Dragon technique, that one was excluded. That allows Rioichi to go to a great distance from a small point. Here's a small trivia. Rioichi was wanted for assisted suicide for 1 billion yen. You can actually notice a sign outside of the sushi house. Next, Henriette One-Eye Cooper. She was born around 1590, perhaps in the Caribbean. If Rioichi was actually born in 1560, then we can all assume that Henriette was Rioichi's daughter. But his daughter wasn't mentioned in Sly 4. Maybe the same situation applies for Salim. He was old, he looked single, he probably had a kid he didn't know about. We're not exactly sure. In 1616, Henriette stole Sinbad's goblet filled with coins from Arabia. In the Cooper Vault, we notice her hook, which has a cane shape. She originally had a dagger with a cane shape. Here's what's interesting, guys. In the 1600s, her and her crew came across Clockwerk. I'm sure a lot of you didn't even know about this. On page 175 of the official strategy guide of the Sly Cooper collection, something is mentioned by Henriette. And see, I did off the port bow, the frightening gaze of an eagle. My strong and seaworthy crew, transfixed in its terrible gaze, lay motionless and silent. All but myself fell victim to its heart-stopping stare. Perhaps my eye patch protected me during the ordeal, and I alone manned the ship away from the flying beast. I fear it may strike again. So out of all ancestors, one talked about Clockwerk. That's very interesting. Other than that, we don't know much about her. We don't see any abilities in the Thievius Raccoonus, but apparently she has the ability to smell gold. Was time altered? No. Thaddeus Winslow Cooper III, born around 1800 in England. He's very gentleman. His cane is very similar to Sly's, but his has a ruby attached to it. We can all assume that his grandfather and father had the same name. I mean, Winslow Cooper III? Yeah, it makes sense. Now his abilities. He's the master of disguise, charm, and deception. During the small cinematic Goodbye My Sweet and Sly 3, we noticed two dates, 1839 and 1893. When did he write these abilities? We are not too sure about that. We can slightly notice that Thaddeus was employed by Scotland Yard at one point. He also made a flying machine in the 1800s, according to Sly, before the battle in Sly 3, before facing Dr. M. Okay, now Thaddeus was born around 1800. Jean Besson froze in the avalanche during the gold rush in Canada in 1852. Could he have come across this ancestor? I mean, look at Jean Besson. Someone even mentioned this in the comment section. He's pretty skilled. His wooden stick looks like a cane. Jean Besson was able to steal the parts from the gang's base. Could Jean Besson have been friends with Thaddeus? Maybe, but if he was friends with one of Sly's ancestors, why would he be a bad guy in Sly 2? He probably didn't notice Sly. Let's leave it at that. Who knows, maybe Thaddeus taught him a few tricks. And maybe his wooden stick is inspired by Thaddeus's cane. Otto van Cooper, he was born between 1900 and 1910 in Germany, and had skills when it came to fighter pilots. Due to his physical inaptitude, he used his talents to pull off heists. Now, his technical blueprints in the Thievius Raccoonus were actually present. Sly used those to modify the van. He put a gun on top of the van and he put a battering ram in front. The battering ram was used against those lava monsters in Sly 1 in the last level. Now, in the Cooper Vault, we can notice the propeller of Otto Van's biplane. It has the shape of a Cooper cane. And according to Sly, he was also a fighter ace. His part in the Thievius Raccoonus got stolen by the Panda King, another member of the Phoenix 5. Now, Otto Van, he had a cane-shaped propeller, but how did he get inside the Cooper Vault? He probably had a cane, but we've never seen it. Or maybe another ancestor was able to find his items and put it inside the vault. Any timeline alteration? No. Next, Tennessee Kid Cooper. He was born between 1850 and 1860. Is he directly related to Thaddeus? The timelines are pretty close. If so, then his father, Thaddeus perhaps, didn't mention him at all. And Tennessee was able to get the book somehow. And Thaddeus' wife traveled somewhere. We don't know. Now in the Cooper Vault, we notice his old 6-shot revolver with a cane-shaped handle. Now in Sly 4, he actually told Bentley that he switched his weapons. He replaced his 6-shot revolver with a rifle that looks like a cane. Now for his story, he committed a bunch of bank robberies. Was time altered? Yep. His great bank robbery was interrupted in 1884. If he was born in 1850, that means he was 34 years old in Sly 4. What happened exactly? Toothpick took over as sheriff, and later on, Tennessee got thrown behind bars. Once everything went back to normal, Tennessee was able to recover his gold and he regained his reputation. In the same year, Toothpick got arrested. We're talking about 1884. He worked on a railroad. Eventually, he became deaf and he got run over by a train. For Tennessee's abilities, we have the rail walk and rail slide. Walk on rails and slide on rails. Pretty simple. Now his pages of the Thievius Raccoonus were stolen by Mugshot, another member of the Phoenix 5. The crack shot technique was excluded from the book. That allowed Tennessee to target multiple objects and shoot with accuracy. While it kinda makes sense why it got excluded, I mean Sly doesn't have a gun. For his personality, he's very enthusiastic. He takes his family legacy very seriously actually. actually. At a point he told Sly, "Now son, you should know that I don't take folks kindly funning my family name." Next, Bruce O. Cooper. He was known as a computer hacker, the smartest of the Coopers. Now the first programmable computer was invented in 1943. If the series is loosely based off our history, then Bruce O. Cooper could perhaps be Sly's grandfather. Wiki states that he was born around 1930 and 1940. If programmable computers were invented during 1943, then it kinda makes sense. Other than that, we don't know much about him. Connor Cooper, born between 1950 and 1960. For his abilities, he came up with slide on lasers. Sly figured this out in the Cooper Vault. Before the night of the attack, between 1986 and 1992, we can assume that that's when Dr. M betrayed Connor and McSweeney. And also during that time period, Connor stole this diamond and Cyrilla Paradox's father, another thief, ended up in jail for his crime. We saw that in Sly 4. In 1987, when Sly was 3 years old, Connor and his son met up with McSweeney at a museum in Italy. Connor gave the map to the Cooper Vault to McSweeney so that he would hide it in the museum. Any sort of time alteration? No. Could Sly meet his father by time traveling? It would change the future too much, so I don't know. Sly Cooper. He was born in 1984. The first game came out in 2002. If Sly was born in 1984, then he was 18 years old by then. The same goes for Murray and Bentley. And what is he doing right now? He's recording his own adventures in the Thievius Raccoonus. Now there's some minor Cooper ancestors. If you guys have noticed, some of the ancestors have a huge timeline gap. So some of these Coopers fit in those timelines. I'm quickly gonna go over the list, alright? Drake Cooper, he was known for a knockout dive. It was an unlockable power in Sly 2 and a purchasable power in Sly 3. Sally Cooper, the roll ability. Dev Cooperinda, slow motion jump in Sly 1. And it was called Thief Reflexes in Sly 2 and Sly 3. Chris Cooper, he was known for the coin collecting dive. He modified the knockout dive, basically. Karen Cooper Wiga, coin magnetism. Fun fact, her name is a reference to Karen Yamagiwa, one of the level designers of the series. Rob McCooper, he was known for the mind technique. BF Cooper, fast time technique. Suzanne Cooper, ability not to lose lucky charm when falling in the water. Andrew Cooper, or Sir Andrew Cooper, the decoy technique. Could he be related to Sir Galleth? Perhaps born in the 1300s? Who knows? Kelly Cooper, electrical aura when rolling. She basically modified Sally Cooper's ability. Matthew de la Couper, slow motion technique. Huckleberry Cooper, move slowly while being invisible. Colonel Raid Cooper, time stop move. Augustine Cooper, ability to defy gravity. Falling without losing a horseshoe. All of their pages were collected in Sly 1. Now why weren't they included in the Cooper Vault? There's a technical answer. There's simply too many of them. Let's come up with a small story. Maybe some of them weren't interested with the Cooper Vault. Now in Sly 1, the Fiendish Five ripped out the Thievius Raccoonus in 5 parts. Which of the members had the pages of these ancestors? That we don't know. Yes, we found these pages in coffins, but I'm just saying. Or maybe if the coffin was in Mockshot's level, for example, then that's the pages that Mockshot stole. But anyways guys, this is it for the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and if you watched the whole thing, thanks, I appreciate it. Other than that guys, as usual, leave your thoughts in the comments. Did I forget anything? I probably did, okay? Now what did you find interesting about this video? Mention everything. And as always, I've been Vivi, and thanks for watching guys.